Greetings, welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes, coming to you live from Treme, historic Treme, Congo Square, Armstrong Park, Mahalia Jackson Theater, Treme Coffee House, Candlelight Lounge. Come on in. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Welcome. Come on in. Greetings and salutations. My phone number is 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. Greetings and salutations. All is a blessing. Greetings. All is a blessing. Come back home to Africa. She's calling your name through the wind. Come back home to Africa. The fatty calf and golden ring are waiting for you once again. Coming back to you. I'm longing for my family. Coming back to you. Out of bondage and now I am free. Da 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 da. Greetings, welcome, greetings and salutations, peace and love, joy and prosperity. All is truly and indeed a blessing. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Come on in. I'm waiting for you once again. Hey Leo, come on in. Welcome. Jumbo, welcome. All is a blessing. Greetings and salutations. Welcome to another edition of Revolutionary Hoodoo, New Orleans Voodoo Secrets and Recipes. All is a blessing. Greetings. Come one, come all. But we don't have no time to play. All is a blessing. Come on in. Thank you, Kiona, beloved. All is a blessing. 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143. You can also utilize the StreamYard link at the bottom of your screen. Welcome. Greetings. Come on in. All is a blessing. Thank you. All is a blessing. Divine, all blessed unity and community. Serenity. Eshu Alekwana Kosi Were Awulo Uto Ni Iwo Ada Afanbo Osi Obatalami Itani Ivo Onilio Aban Eshu. Eshu is respected elder who flogs, confronts, and uncovers fools. That one versed in mysteries uses truth to own you. He causes scattered feet poverty. Obatala shakes rascals to have sacrifice The owner of warnings is the one who is Eshu, Aboru, Aboye, Abushishe, Ashe. May our Ebo reach our room. May our Ebo be accepted. May our Ebo allow what we desire to come to pass. And so we say, Ashe. Divine, all blessed peace and love, joy and prosperity, elevation, revelations, and manifestation. You are now listening live to the Divine Prince, Pan-African spiritualist, practitioner, author, and advisor, Elagun Oloye Hoodoo Obeya Bokur, sharing with you in all things spiritual, mystical, metaphysical, cosmic, evolutionary, revolutionary, healing, and holistic from a Pan-African Hoodoo world spiritualist perspective, understanding that all is truly and indeed a blessing. If you can just see beyond the veils, for it is all just an illusion and a test and one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. This is indeed my constant prayer, my mantra, affirmation, my reverberation, reiteration, and it is my ever-living reality. It is crucial. All is a blessing is crucial to the very foundation of my understanding, my being, my walk, my works, my demonstration along this divine, all blessed life path and journey. It is how I, the Divine Prince, make sense out of all that we're challenged with here in our daily existence on Mother, Father Earth. And it is my personal place of power and understanding, that place from where I begin, the place from where I realize and crystallize all my endeavors, understanding that I and I alone create and co-create my divine destiny, and I alone create and co-create my divine all blessed reality. And so it is. Ashe. Today is Wednesday, July 29th, the day before my maternal grandmother's birthday. May she rest in her room. And I am indeed emanating and vibrating with you and for you, live, virtually, verbally, cosmically, quantum universally, from this working temple of the House of the Divine Prince. Thai Potions, Hoodoo Central LLC, in this legendary, historic, beautiful, and most enchanted city in America, New Orleans, Louisiana, the land of my ancestors and those who came before me along this Hoodoo Obeya life path and journey, passing down the great Obeya stick along with the knowledge of the life-giving herbs, roots, plants, rituals, spirits, minerals, indeed the legacy, the traditions, the history, the culture, our sacred stories. And I ask you, and I invite you daily to visit us at oursacredstories.com, www.oursacredstories.com, for your tour plus experience, reservations, detailed information, etc. We are truly indeed grateful for those who continue to show up here with me at high noon U.S. Central Standard Time for the creation of this squared circle of gods and goddesses, the creation of this sacred space. For indeed, the creation of sacred space is critical to all that we might think to do, all that we might think we are, all truly who we absolutely are, and how that then comes forward in our demonstration is implicit in the creation of sacred space. For indeed, if you can't treat this space with sanctity, if you can't treat this space with sanctity, then all out here, outside of self, is just a dramatic illusion. And so the creation of sacred space, understanding that spiritual knowledge and power lies in its efficacy, in its ability to provide and produce lasting, reliable, tangible manifestation and results right here, right now, in this most present moment in time space. All else is vanity, all else is ego, all else is illusion, all else is comedy and entertainment. And whatever you do, don't call it voodoo. I want to welcome each and every one of you, both individually and collectively. I don't mean to overlook anybody. It's a lot going on at this switchboard here. I've completely lost my place, but I agree. Oh, here we are. We're at Coco Monday and Chef Bougie and Denise Preston. Welcome, welcome. I greet each and every one of you, and please do acknowledge our beloved moderator, Keona D. Carter, co-host, if you will, of the show. She helps me to maintain some order here in the chat so that I don't miss anyone. Greetings, Anthony. Greetings, beloved. Thank you for coming, especially today. I want to talk about what I feel to be one of the most important topics in Voodoo. Mojuba Orisha, Iba Orisha. Welcome, beloved. I want to discuss Voodoo and Divination. It's a topic that people don't often like to confront, look at, explore, because we have to get down to details and we have to get down to specifics and we have to indeed get down to facts. And so my title today was Voodoo and Divination, but indeed I added a little extra to it as I was loading my show. And I said, after God is Dibia. After God is Dibia. And some of you know, those of you who've been around for, like Tasha, with me for a while, know that I'm actually more Igbo than I am Yoruba. But if I started speaking a lot of Igbo, if I started enunciating Igbo deities, for instance, Lucy, many of you would have no knowledge of that because it's not a part of the quote unquote Orisha romance. So it doesn't make sense for me to do a show pronouncing, fabulous foreign languages that a great deal of my audience might not comprehend and or understand. But I reinforce each and every day the dynamics of the Pan-African diaspora, the dynamics of ATR in the manifestation of Voodoo, indigenous practice and tradition, in its myriad ways here in the New World. And indeed, Voodoo, and particularly in this house, is a very generic term. It's a very universally applied term. Again, I've said it on the show previously that if you really want to look at ATR, indigenous practice and tradition, you have to look at ethnic groups. And so we've given a great deal of focus to the Yoruba. We've given a great deal of focus to Cuba and to Puerto Rico and to Brazil and to many other places outside of, indeed, ourselves. And when we start looking at those DNA ladders, those Jacob's ladders, those strands of lineage that indeed hold us together, we have to embrace the truth that we're more than one thing, and indeed we're more than just Yoruba. There's God, and then there's Dibia. Is a popular spiritual phraseology in Igbo tradition. And Dibia, among the Igbo, are the mystic mediators between the human world and the spirit world, who act as healers, scribes, teachers, diviners, advisors of people in the community. They are usually consulted at the shrine of a community's major deity. Dibia is a compound of the word D, which means professional or master or even father, not father, husband, depending on how it's utilized, and obia, D-obia, meaning doctoring, sciences. And I don't mean obia in the way we spell it, O-B-E-A-H. I mean in its most original form, O-B-I-A, from the perspective of the Igbo. The Dibia are believed to be destined for spirit work. The Dibia sees the spiritual world at any time and interprets the messages, the signs being sent, and sees the spiritual problems of the living within their communities, within their families, within their compounds, within their villages. And so Dibia is a word that might be unfamiliar to many of you who aren't quite fluent in Igbo or some of the other ethnic groups in Nigeria beyond just the Yoruba, but the concepts behind what Dibia is. And the root word Obia is familiar to many of you. And so when we put it in this most authentic context, we have to look at lineage. We have to look at bloodline. And we have to look at the reality of the Middle Passage. Indeed, no one people, as we discussed on the previous show, were sent to one location exclusively. And once you get here into this mess of the Americas, that indeed the slave trade must have been for our ancestors, then you were at risk of being sold, shipped, bought, traded anywhere and to anywhere. And we must again reinforce the reality of New Orleans being a port city, being a port location in this part of the world. And so many resources beyond just enslaved Africans would have been transported into the Americas and then on back into Europe, hence the quote unquote Middle Passage. The leg of enslavement between the coast of West Africa and Brazil or the Caribbean islands was just the beginning of a long journey of oppressive, brutal behaviors that would have also carried our traditions, our secrets, our mysteries with us to wherever we would have been found, to wherever we would have manifest in the New World. And so the notion of any form of voodoo without divination is really not voodoo at all. You're indeed now referencing, if not hoodoo, and we're going to talk about that interplay between hoodoo and voodoo a little bit more today, but from a historical perspective. But also you're talking about witchcraft and the introduction of other New World ideas, concepts, Old World ideas, concepts mixed in now into the Americas. And that is a great segue, if you will, into sort of the controversy over the word usage, voodoo with 4 O's, hoodoo, and how it became symbolic of bastardization, if you will, in the New World. There was indeed a time here in New Orleans where the people of color wanted to make a distinct separation between what people were doing, the community was doing, and then those who would otherwise appropriate it. And appropriation is a new word, maybe not necessarily a new concept, but a really new word. When we think of it in this much more raw terminology of the 16th and 17th century, we're talking about stealing. We're talking about bastardizing. We're talking about, if not bastardizing your tradition, taking your tradition away from you, telling you that it's heathenistic, that it's demonic, that it's somehow evil and of no use, versus now subjugating your tradition, primarily for the selling of product, keeping spiritual supply shops and botanica doors open. We also have to look at the other way that we bastardize something. We humorize it. We make a joke of it. We make it out to be exaggerated, and we make it out to be somehow, so exaggerated that it couldn't possibly be real. And we've walked in between those avenues of rejection, bastardization, greetings, mom, appropriation, and then outright stealing it since we arrived in the Americas. It's been in question. And particularly here, we see it in a more modern context in Central America, South of America, Brazil. But at the same time, we acknowledge the heritage, the lineage, the historical practice and representation of those Maroons who fought to hold on to not just their lives, but the cultures and the traditions and the rhythms and the beats that would have still existed within them, to being forced to now become Catholic, to become Christian in some cases. And in the cases, remember now, here in America, we weren't being forced to be anything at first. In fact, we were outright being denied access to religion, to books and Bibles and gathering, if you will. So the notion that in the absence of tradition, we somehow disintegrated into just field slaves and house slaves is a part of the white supremacist narrative that shows up particularly in religion. I say all the time, we all, in terms of division of labor, have our own role, individual specified role to play in liberation, in freedom, in revolution. Mine just happens to be spirituality and religion. But indeed, spirituality and religion may be one of the most ferocious weapons and tools, depending on how you look at it, how you apply it, that has been used against us, but we've also had access to since this dynamic began. And not just from the west coast of Africa. We don't give the Arabs in the Middle East enough credit for their participation and some would say creation of slaving and slave trading to begin with. So indeed, the idea that our gods are somehow disempowered through enslavement. Your magic is no good if you're allowed to be enslaved. Your gods are of no significance in a Western mindset if you allow us to dominate you. And it's a battle that we still are battling even today in 2020, 2021. It's an ongoing battle between the proof in your gods, in your power, in your knowledge, standing up, versus the reality, the physical, carnal, material reality that we often find ourselves in. Greetings, beloved. Greetings, greetings. Welcome each and every one of you who I may not have acknowledged individually. I want to also acknowledge you collectively. I also invite you to use my phone lines at area code 845-277-9143. 845-277-9143, particularly if you don't have a camera and you are unable to join us live on screen. You've heard me say more than once that without the Fa, there would be no voodoo. Without voodoo, there would be no Ifa. And we use those interchangeably. We use those one to supply and support the other, and vice versa. And that is because if we reduce it to elements, there is earth, there is nature, there is a plant, if you will, but then there's the math. And that science, that divine science, shows up in the Fa. And based on your ethnic group, you might say Fa, you might say Afa, you might say Ifa, based on your ethnic group. So please stop asking me, how do I divine, how do I figure out what my lineage is if you are still unclear about what your ethnic background is, what your ethnic DNA chain is. It's indeed in that makes my house separate, different from other houses, but it's also within that very truth that we discern lineage, that we discern the traditions that would have been maintained within the communities of those particular ethnic groups. When we look at the Gullah Geechee, for instance, on the East Coast, Southern East Coast, indeed there would be traditions, practices that have been documented by archaeologists that are specific to that region, specific to the ethnic groups, the families, that would have lived and exist and operated in those communities. So indeed, we see it representing itself differently in Venezuela, differently in Brazil, differently in Panama, differently in Cuba, and often hidden behind, masked behind that which was forced upon us. And in the New World, we know that to be Catholicism, Christianity, and Islam, at least in the New World, we can't say was enforced upon anyone, but it certainly was upheld and maintained by those families, those ethnic groups who were familiar with it, who remembered it, who knew that that was where they were from. Not Alvin Ailey, Alex Haley. Alvin Ailey is the historic dancer. Alex Haley is the historic book author and creator, if you will, Roots, the 1970s Roots, not the Roots that we filmed in the last 5 years, but the Roots from the 1970s. And that was one of the ideas, if you will, that he played around with in his story. And that was that Kunta Kinte's family and lineage had been one of Islam. And a remembrance of Islamic practice and tradition. So he not only attempted to pass on to Kizzy the language, the alphabet, the counting, particular words, but he also passed on to her the religion and the practice of Islam as he remembered it from the Senegal, Gambia, Senegal region, in which the character Kunta Kinte was based on in Roots. I say often, and I say all the time, that if we could count in Fan, if we could count in Ewe, if we could count in Yoruba, then indeed we're only now being forced to learn to count in English, Spanish, Portuguese. But it doesn't strip away our ability to connect to what's sacred in these traditions. And indeed, without divination, none of these traditions have a framework, if you will, of which to be built upon. I often say that ancestral worship and divination is indeed a major component to ATR in general, ancestral veneration. But then, you know, I titled the show After God, Then Dibia. But I might say after God and ancestors, then indeed Dibia. And Dibia being that manifestation of spirit through the divine arts, the divine science of math and other ways in which these practices and traditions show up symbolically and maintain their livelihood into the new world, so much so that they are deeply ingrained in who many of us are and claim to be and represent today. A great book from which I kind of borrowed the title for this show called After God is Dibia, Igbo Cosmology, Divination, and Healing in Nigeria, Volume 1, Igbo Cosmology, Divination, and Sacred Science in Nigeria by John A. Ume, U-M-E-H, Ume, John A. Ume. It's a great book. It's not really available anywhere for free, of course. I would advise strongly against clicking on the PDF links that are often attached to this book. There's so many of them that it's curious. So I think that it might be something corrupted. So you'd be better off going to Amazon or to your bookstore and ordering or purchasing and buying this book directly if you are indeed interested in checking it out. Greetings, beloved Lady Phoenix. Greetings. And I'm expecting an appointment today too, a little bit early. So I'm going to need you all to kick in like right now, or I'm going to be moving on to the rest of my day. Yeah, there's even some locations where this book is said to be authored by other people. So I would be very careful about trying to click on and get that freebie. Everything free ain't free. Everything that's a dollar ain't a dollar. Everything that's on the low end of the price spectrum ain't on the low end of the price spectrum. It's not worth you contaminating your computer, is it? So I wouldn't click on those PDFs, but I would go to Amazon or some of your book retailers and look for the book. And again, it's called uh, After God is Dibia, Dibia, Igbo, Cosmology, Divination, and Healing in Nigeria. For those of you who are familiar, there are at least 200 ethnic groups and languages spoken in Nigeria. The Yoruba, and it's not Yoruba, it's the Yoruba, is one of them. And the Igbo is another, but there are several others, to include the Hausa, um, which is little discussed in the HER circles because the Hausa are primarily Islamic ethnic group. And so we tend to seek out the ethnic groups that are not operating within the three main world religious traditional systems, seeking what we identify as being more rooted, more grounded, more indigenous. So I invite you to seek out ethnic groups. Choose an ethnic group, choose a handful, choose a dozen, and do your homework, do your research. Um, you'll find that often language will become an issue. French is commonly what you're going to find, quote unquote, voodoo oriented information in online. If not Fon or Ewe, which even a smaller number of us can even identify, let alone read and or pronounce. So looking at ethnic groups like the Igbo, like the Yoruba, like the Akan, that are a little bit more fluid in English, you're more likely to find more material in English that can help you to sort of navigate those systems and traditions. And of course, if you're a student, then you get you a great godparent who can walk you through and help you navigate the dynamics of not only connecting to roots, but better understanding how the roots work and how they now show up in our world in a modern context. Some read by 8, others read by 16, others read by 12. And so understanding the specifics of any manifestation of voodoo, you have to know the language by which the spirits are speaking. We see a demonstration, and particularly in Haiti and here in the US and in Sanse and even Maria Leonza, a demonstration of divination by way of trance and trance possession. I say that if the Christians have a book and the Islams have a book and the Hindus have books, then indeed our quote unquote book would be Odu and how Odu falls in divination. But there are demonstrations like America and Haiti here in the New World where you don't readily see the math structure of divination. You see transpossession. And we see the usage of regular cards in Haitian voodoo as a form of divination. But again, that's no different than borrowing from tarot, a purely Eurocentric notion today, and then bringing that into our traditions. I don't want to argue the roots of tarot being in Africa and Egypt. I clearly understand that, and many of you all do too. But that manifestation of tarot that we're seeing today is not rooted in Egyptian science. It's not rooted in Afrocentric, African-based um, science, spiritual science, save for Dibia, save for Ifa, the Fa, and how it's gathered great popularity here in the West, not just in our spiritual application, but in your technological application, speaks to the power and the prowess of that binary system to not only foretell the past, the present, and the future by way of numbers and a binary code, but also to be able to create and recreate a reality that's in the image of God, indeed in our image, shaped and sculpted in our own image. Listen, y'all, if y'all don't have any questions, any comments for me, I can end the show at 35 minutes. I really don't have the schedule today to sort of talk and entertain y'all for 2 or 3 hours and then have y'all pile your questions up at the end of the show. I just don't have that time. So if you have questions, you have things you want me to talk about and explore, let me have it. Otherwise, I'm going to go a little bit more into my context, and then I'm going to move on to my appointment. It has been said that voodoo don't need divination. I would dare say that only a fool would say such a thing. I would dare say that only a fool who knows nothing about voodoo whatsoever would make a statement of such. Again, if you're seeing what appears to be the illusion of African-based systems with no divination, you're probably looking at hoodoo, root work, corrupted conjure, with some mix of witchcraft in it. There is no indigenous-based system that's absent of divination. None. And so our refusal to better understand the dynamics of divination, and divination shows up in not just numerology, because some of you are all accountant shells and you believe that to be the extent of divination. But there's also symbolism, the pattern, the positioning of what's on the table, what's before you. I've seen a proliferation in recent years of supposed bone readers. And 98% of them are European bone readers. And so I'm not understanding, other than some of the, random books I've ran into online through some of my book journeying, where they're even getting their understanding of what bone reading is. Bone reading isn't about feeling. Bone reading isn't about being empathic. Bone reading, like Fa divination, is a science that requires a coded awareness that's not easy to locate in a book. I challenge you to try and locate divination in Ewe, divination in Fan, divination for Ikbu. I challenge you to look for that. I challenge you, we do these little Google and Bing challenges. I challenge you to look for that. It's not out there. And where it is out there, you've got to have a certain order of words. Kiona know what I'm talking about. Wapani know what I'm talking about. You have to have a certain order of words, and then you have to have a inner standing of the word that you're using. You can type Ifa right now, IFA, in Bing, and nothing Yoruba will come up on the screen. In fact, there are businesses, there are industries, there are companies and corporations, that have those acronyms, IFA, Ifa. So if you don't have other associated words like Yoruba, like divination, then you're not going to find in a common search. We also discussed yesterday that what's popularized shows up first in the search engines. What's paid for, i.e. promotions and advertisement, shows up first in your search engines. And then what's heavily promoted shows up first in your search engines. There are certain new projects, new technologies, new products, for instance, that show up, in your email box, or show up, as an advertisement on YouTube even. And you go to research that, and everything in the search is that thing. Even the reviews, even the instructions, are from that particular company or that particular entity. And so that's not unbiased. That's not, that's not information that's useful. We used to call this the information highway back in the 70s. Back in the 80s, we called this the information highway. But information does not equate to education. Information does not equate to wisdom. Information does not equate to the appropriate application thereof. How many products have you ever bought? How many pieces of furniture have you ever bought offline and got the instructions, and it was in German, it was in Chinese, it was in Spanish, it was in everything but English. And what was understandable was in diagrams, pictures with numbers, step 1, step 2, step 3. So what good is that to you if you don't understand? And I like to say understand, because people will look you right in the face and say, oh yeah, I get it, until you start breaking down those words, until you start asking questions. We have a complex in America, and it's not just Black people either, by the way. We have a complex in America about education. And so we're not quick to admit what we don't know, what we don't understand, what we can't readily make sense of. We somehow think that makes us weak, or makes us look bad, even in terms of resume writing. Back in my former life when I had to do that, how often did you hear people would fudge their resume, would corrupt their resume, thinking that it would be so many of them, and just maybe they aren't going to look into the fine details of a thing. Just maybe they aren't going to actually do a background check. Just maybe they aren't going to find out that Hoodoo Central is really a product of New Orleans and not a product, of Georgia. So we have got to move ourselves to a place where we're willing to be revolutionary, we're willing to be proactive, we're willing to protest, we're willing to be activists, but we're also willing to acknowledge the work associated with it and the expertise that comes in the understanding of the work. Card reading, thank you, Denise Preston. I love you. You always active, you always participate, you always got questions. I'm grateful for you and your participation in the show. She has no fear of me, and neither should you. So come on with your questions and your comments. Card reading started showing up in Voodoo, obviously, in the New World. It showed up in Haiti when we were given access to cards. When we were given access to that as a product. I also believe that card reading developed, just like using the Bible, for instance, to mask your ATR, using Catholic statuary to mask your ATR. So I also think that the cards, and even to some degree dominoes, some of y'all don't know about doing readings with dominoes. You can, well, I'm not gonna give it all away, but you can use cards to mask the notion that you're doing anything spiritual necessarily. You could just be that crazy, darky slave that's got some kind of excessive solitaire game going on. You know, I don't know what the mindset would have been. You know, we would really have to go into trance mediumship and really put ourselves in that position. And by the way, while I'm speaking of that, I've tried many times over the course of my life and my spiritual life to have past life regression done. I've always said that one day when I can afford it, I'm actually going to hire a professional hypnotist and see if a hypnotist can take me back into some of those past life memories that I'm unable to access. But slavery, to a great degree, is a blur for me. It's not a arrogant thing. It's not a, you know, me wanting to not acknowledge my connection to, you know, Africa and enslavement, obviously. But it's a reality based on my aggressive work in that regard. The closest I've gotten is a watermelon patch where I was lynched in. And to this day, meaning in this present life, I can't stand the smell of watermelon. The smell of watermelon will make me vomit. Now, I can handle artificial watermelon, watermelon annihilators. I can handle honeydew, which is not very far removed from watermelon in terms of the smell. But real organic watermelon, especially ripe watermelon, I can't handle. Just right now, my stomach is turning, my mouth is watering, you know, like when you want to Earl. Yeah, I can't handle it even till this day. But trying to resurrect slave memories, I have not been able to do it, either house or field. And I don't believe that that means that I have no slave ancestry. I know that to not be true. Even though I have not been able to find it yet, documented, by the way. In all of my ancestry DNA and 23andMe, I still have not found a documented slave by name yet. But I know that they're there. But the notion of reading cards started on this side of the Atlantic. Of course, there was no card reading. There's no card reading and divination even today in West Africa. We use shells, we use palm nuts, we use other organic materials, pebbles, sand, nature, droppings of animals, entrails in terms of divination. So the introduction of tarot cards, the introduction of runes, the introduction of Western astrology, because indeed we had astrology in the indigenous world. We would have had astrology in the Middle Passage. We would have brought astrology with us to the New World. Have you seen the movie Amistad? We were aware of the moon and the stars and the placement. But tarot cards, playing cards, Denise, that was all introduced relatively in modern times in terms of history. I would say in the last 200 years. Yes, the Goddess Initiative, thank you. All of the good PDFs that she's found on anything has taken her hours of creative wording and going up to 10 pages in, if they even have that many, by using her work computer in case of a virus. Okay, I got you on the viruses. You just need some good security, that's all. You just need some good security, and you need to have the right things in place on your computer. And I don't click on anything. I know some of y'all are trying it. There's somebody under the sound of my voice right now is trying it. It's not working. It's not working, and they sending all kind of stuff to my email. You know, first they try greed. You know, it's the email that has money attached to it. You know, millions of dollars are available, or, you know, or they try love. You know, sometimes it's a man, sometimes it's a woman, but you gotta click on this link. And that's why I keep telling y'all, leave that messenger alone. Leave that Facebook messenger alone. All those random instant messages are not coming from your mama, your sister, your friend, your brother, your cousin. It's a bot. B-O-T, it's a bot. But finding real information is not easy. Why else do they charge for education? And why so much for education? And I know we can, I just opened a can of worms on that. But finding real information about us is not easy. Finding real information about indigenous cultures and traditions are not easy. And some of the things that I find some of you would be diametrically opposed to reading just on its face value. And because of that, you miss the reward. For instance, a lot of these good documents that really give you contextual information about ethnic groups in sub-Saharan Africa, for instance, are being generated by evangelical Christian groups and other religious groups who want to convert those people. And so, for instance, I'm looking at a document right now, Good News Theological College and Seminary, a proposal towards Afa divination among the Anlo Ewe in Ghana, an epitome of prophetic utterance of charismatic churches in Ghana by Robert Yale Swore. And it was presented to a Reverend Dr. Thomas Oduro in Oyibi, Duduwa Road in Ghana. And so these evangelicals, and they all not American, you know, they've converted a great deal of West Africans on the continent to do the work. They don't always have to physically go over there and stir the pot, if you will. But I run across documents such as this all the time. The social and cultural religious views of the Anlo Airways outlined in this paper, the history of the Airway Anlos in Ghana, the exodus of the Airway Anlos in Ghana, the history of Afa divination, what Afa divination is about, the Afa divination in biblical concept, the methods and elements of Afa divination. So you have to be well studied, you have to be erudite, your third eye has to be open, but so too does your practicality, because now you have to separate the wheat from the tare, as they say. Now you have to separate what's drama. Something going on outside. Now you have to separate the drama from the truth. Often what is presented right up front to you, we talked yesterday about the food and the product placement at the end of the aisle. That's what y'all are getting in your Google search. That's what you're getting in your Bing search. And so your nice little cozy Orisha romantic list of spirits and days of the week, and it's a condensing of information. But now it's so popularized that it's often overtly prepared to capture you for some detour beyond living your truth. And I proclaimed yesterday, we don't need any more distractions. We don't need any more detours. We don't need any more books, book authors, speakers, teachers, etc., presenting detours to our destiny, preventing us from getting to where we need to be. And particularly in this present dispensation, in this present moment in time space. Yes, if you have any connection to Goddess Initiative or anyone else listening to an actual slave, you know, in your family, that's powerful. We generalize enslavement, and some now in conspiracy say, well, you know, my family was already here. Well, I say, show me the DNA. Show me the the lineage, the blood work. But yeah, there aren't many of us that are readily and easily able to point to a plantation, point to a particular location. Now I know my people moved from Bogalusa, Louisiana to Louise, Mississippi, and were a part of the creation of that town. Hence the name Louise, which is very French Creole, Eastern, Southeastern Louisiana. And they left Bogalusa right before Bogalusa became an incorporated area, incorporated city. And they moved up Delta, up river to Louise, Mississippi. And they carried a great deal of the practices and the traditions and the foods and the flavor and the culture with them, but they also let go of several others that might be of importance to me or to us today. My great-great-grandparents on my father's side were also Poisson Blanc. So we can assume, again, another degree of information that may have been either hidden or lost as a person tries to pass for white, tries to get along in America without their lineage, their heritage, their background being evident. Yeah, traditional, real, Matthew Ferguson, real traditional bone information is difficult to get access to. And I'm going to say why. I'm going to say it has everything to do with PETA and the Western ideal set about animals. We don't talk a lot about animals on this show. We don't talk a lot about sacrifice on this show. We don't talk a lot about blood on this show. Not that it's not real, not that it's not happening, but I'm not about to be responsible for making no monsters out of none of y'all, developing no kitchen witches out of none of y'all to do crazy things. I already got a godchild that's doing some crazy things. I don't need more. And secondly, it's just politically incorrect, Matthew, in many regions of the country. Florida had to fight for it. The South had to fight for it to some degree, but it's still often not discussed. So finding real authentic information about bone reading, I believe, gets lost in the politics of that aspect. You know, where the bones come from, who's producing these bones. You know, that becomes a tricky issue for the Western palate. I hear you saying Goddess says she got a master's degree in research. And I got quite a few people, I believe, who've graduated from your school. My mama would be one of them. My mama taught me how to research. My mama, I like to say it, was the first college educated woman on her mother's side of the family. And so I grew up watching my mom do business in the marketplace, doing business at the bank. And then when she, you know, my mom is a retired teacher, when she was in her workplace, I saw some of the dynamics of education and schooling and school system and how that happens and how that comes together. So having a degree in research, having a degree in reading, reading is fundamental. That's a meme today. We make that to be a joke today. Again, going back to the state of the American mindset, we joke about being studious. We joke about the kid who kept up with their homework. We belittle, you know, the guy like me who had a greater interest in culture and art and music, you know, and creativity than I did in sports or recess. We joke about that in America while we stereotype Asians for being super smart, which is equally racist and equally dangerous, by the way. You know, Asians are committing suicide if they can't live up to the the Western idea of success in their own family, in their own homelands. So we often think that the toxicity of racism and slavery and white supremacy only is a black and white thing. It affects the entire globe. It just shows up differently based on who you are and where you come from and what you look like and how you're able to navigate at any given moment, in present moment, in time space. So I'm grateful for my mom. I'm grateful for her taking us to the library. I'm grateful for her carrying us to museums. I'm grateful for her exposing us to culture and tradition, and education and information, so that I'm not a lemming, so that I'm not a sheep. You know, those are words that your Republican patriots are throwing around today. but they're absolutely the sheep. They're absolutely creating the very dynamics by which many are just following. No matter which side of the coin you're on, many are just following. If that weren't true, we wouldn't have advertisement, we wouldn't have TV commercials, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Greetings, Neophyte Bokur. Thank you for coming. You probably didn't hear me say a little bit earlier that I'm going to keep it moving. I've got a lot on my plate today. Oh, I also want to acknowledge, for those of you who supported, for those of you who showed love, for those of you who sent donations, the divination room just on the other side of that wall, coming together. It will be open in a matter of days. I can't say exactly when. I still have another major delivery coming. My church pew. I'm waiting on my church pew. And when my church pew get here, then I'll open the doors as well as the cameras. I've already got it set up. I'm prepared to do the show from any other area of the house that I need to. And the divination room will be a great space for us to work in and work through. I also want to alert my Patreon supporters and subscribers. Give me 24 hours and Patreon is going to be overloaded. So if you're already on my Patreon, thank you. I'm grateful for your support. But if you're not, you might want to get on now. This might be the time. You might have to play a little catch up with what's already there and then what I'll be uploading in the next 12 to 24 hours. I'm open and welcoming your feedback. Yeah, my mom is a blessing. My mom is still very much alive and well and youthful, and knowledgeable and expanding and growing. My mom doesn't fit many of the stereotypes that we place on the elderly or our aging community. So yeah, I'm absolutely grateful for my mom, for the demonstration of my mom, for the hell and back that me and my mom and my sister Wapani, have gone through. You hear me talk about us as a trio, because in many ways we are a trio. I have other family. My dad is still living. I have brothers and sisters that are still living who aren't an active part of my life every day, who aren't an active part of my reality every day. And many of you share that similar story. And it doesn't prevent me, block me, stop me from living my best life, presenting my best demonstration, making sure it's documented and recorded for future dexterity. It doesn't stop me from being and becoming indeed who my head would have me to be. My godchildren know what I mean. Because without your head, you have nothing without your head. Without your consciousness, you have nothing. And so if you give your consciousness over to addiction, over to depression, over to negative thoughts, over to negative feelings, the illusion that it's created, recreated from the outside, grows, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But the truth is, particularly if you 21, 25, 30, 35, you now have control over your life. You now have control over your destiny. And for those of you who have children, you now have the controls, if you will, of your little ones in your hands. So do what's in your best interest. Live your best life. Be your best you. We don't have to live a life of industry and punching the clock anymore unless we want to, unless you choose to, unless that's the only option available to you, unless that's the only thing that you know. And so within that, there is the opportunity for exploring, for acquiring, for gathering that which you don't have, that which you don't know, and transcending the blocks. Transcend the blocks. Listen, I can't help you transcend the blocks in 3 minutes on Psychic World. Understand. People wait and come with the deepest of questions. And some of you try and do that copy and paste and pop all that in on me. I can't answer your whole life in 3 minutes, you know, on Psychic World. I just can't. But for those of us who are willing to do their work, to put in that time, to do some research, to do some study, it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding. And the empowerment and the blessing that comes from doing that work can't be taken from you, can't be stolen from you, can't be shaken out of you. It's indeed yours now. And the opportunity to pass that on to other generations, to pass that on to those who will come behind us. Because y'all not thinking about the people who's going to come behind you in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. And heaven forbid, knock on wood, we don't know who will be here in 5 years. Ooh, Tasha Love. Tasha, I thought Queenie Farmer would live forever. Didn't you? So we never know who won't be here a year from now or 2 years from now. You never know if you will be here 6 months from now, a year from now. So live your best life. Document your best life. Beloved, stop tweeting all of your despair, all of your sadness, all of your desperation, all of your depression. Stop tweeting that. It only creates a vortex of victimization around you. The sharks and the vultures swarm around you energetically when you do that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. And they say in the 12-step program, fake it until you make it. So put up a smiley face. I do it. Ask my mom. I do it almost every day. Put up the sun. You know, put up coffee. But stop bearing your desperation to the world. It only makes you a target for more of that. It only makes you a target for more of that. Not just that vortex that pulls that recreated reality in, but those who would otherwise victimize, those who would otherwise take advantage of the weak, those who would otherwise take advantage of you when you're not in your moment of strength. And gather support around you that is positive, that is uplifting, that is empowering. I know I've gotten way off my topic of voodoo and divination. There is no voodoo without divination. There is no voodoo without Fa. There is no voodoo without Ifa. There is no Ifa without voodoo. And if we want to go ethnic group to ethnic group, there's no African-based spiritual system. There's no indigenous world system that does not include divination and our ability to connect with spirit for answers to real world solutions, real world blocks, real world healing. Listen, I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I'm dehydrated. My mouth is dry, and I'm going to stop. Yeah, you've got to document your life, Artist April. We are all documenting our life right now, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And for some of you, it is what it is. For some of you, it's going to sound shady. But what does your Twitter say about you, really? What does your Instagram say about you, really? And I know some of you see that as a whole nother virtual, unreal world that has no real effect on your quote unquote real reality. But if you 15, 16, 18, 20, 25, 30, and you plan to apply for a job anytime soon, you better believe they're looking at your Instagram. You better believe they have access to your Twitter. But let's say you aren't a young one. Let's say you are a little bit older. What does your Twitter, what does your Facebook, what does your Instagram say about you in a context of something that your great grandchildren might find? And I know you think that if I might delete my profile. Well, okay, maybe, maybe. The Goddess Initiative and I will have you know that there's some people out there who are hot on the copy and paste button. And the minute y'all post that foolishness, they've already got the screenshot of it. There's no such thing as deleting it. Well, I'm going to delete my page. Well, I'm going to go back and, and delete my post. I'm going to throw up some crazy YouTube video and then 5 minutes later have regrets about it. It shows up in your email as a gray box. Y'all know that's what's happening, right? They go back and they delete that email. By the time it gets to your email box, that YouTube video is gray because they've deleted it. Because you all are posting on spontaneous energy. You all are posting on the feeling in the moment, just like your president. You all are posting what you say, what you feel, what you think. And in some cases, you are deliberately posting stuff that you don't believe, that you don't think. I got a friend who's a TV producer who does that. Posts some of the craziest stuff that I know he don't believe, that I know he don't support. And he might be fishing. That might be his way of fishing. He want to see how many idiots agree. And then maybe he has plans for you. I don't know. But I'm going to move on, y'all, because y'all not talking enough for me today. Nobody's on screen. Nobody's on the phones. And I just can't entertain y'all like that for 2 or 3 hours. I just can't. I just can't. But I invite you to stay in there. Stay in there. This is not the time to give up. This is not the time to back down. This is not the time to back up. This is the time to persevere and to move forward. If we're ever going to shatter not just racism and white supremacy, but bigotry and prejudice, how it shows up in religion, we've got to be a shining example for ATR. We can't support foolishness. We can't co-sign foolishness. We can't sit back and watch foolishness happen. We just can't. And so do it for your children. Do it for your grandchildren. Do it for your great-grandchildren. Do it for the next generation. All is truly and indeed a blessing. Ashe. Asheo. Oh, I'm good, Kiona. All is a blessing.